Enjoy reading the story on Manga Funny channel.
In the previous episode, Raphael Ludovica asked Romeo to keep an eye on Sasha and keep her close in order to find out more information about her. Let's continue following the story. After a tough morning of training, the knights were too exhausted to stand. However, the training, which included jumping through rings of fire and sticking their heads in a crocodile's mouth, ended just before lunch. She thought this felt more like a circus than night training. Then, the team received notice that in the afternoon, they would meet their direct superiors. Hearing about the meeting with her superior lifted her spirits as she headed to lunch. Once she became the guardian of a senior knight, she would live and train directly under them. If her superior was kind and easygoing, her life in the army might be a bit easier. Since she had already decided to endure until she couldn't anymore, she silently prayed to be assigned to someone good. She couldn't believe who her superior turned out to be. As he opened a letter, he asked her, "You didn't expect this, did you? How could something like this happen to her?" He glanced at her and asked why she wasn't answering while she was still doing push-ups with her head. She said, I'm honored to see you again, my lord, but why the sudden greeting?" He was thinking about how to punish her for the disrespect during the test. He ordered her to stand and come closer. She tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, and surely he wouldn't still hold that against her. His serious expression made her move closer immediately. In her mind, she thought, "Is he really going to hit me this time? If he strikes me with that arm, this time I might actually break something." He called her name and asked if she heard his command. He heard that she was a commoner without a surname and needed her to confirm it. She confirmed that it was true. He also asked for her age and verified she was 17. Then he asked how she knew the Albrecht family and why she seemed somewhat familiar with them. She insisted that she wasn't familiar with them at all. She had only seen him from a distance while she was training in the yard. How could a commoner like her befriend a noble? His expression was skeptical, and he asked if what she said was really the truth. He hoped that everything she said was true, but something seemed off. She responded, "That's not true." "What do you mean by that?" He stood up suddenly, lifting her chin with his hand and said, "For a commoner, your skin looks too nice." Once again, Raphael asked her who she really was. In her mind, she thought, maybe he's starting to suspect something. She told herself, "Don't panic, Charlotte. The Grand Duke has never seen my true form. As long as I act shamelessly, he won't figure it out." Suddenly, she asked if her skin was really that good, my lord. Good enough for him to take a closer look? She gazed at him with wide eyes. At that moment, he let go of her and said, "Stop those disgusting words. Don't say foolish things like that." She was relieved she had managed to change the subject. She thought she had survived the crisis in the room. As she was preparing to go out, she accidentally saw the letter. It requested an investigation into the ancient ruins in the west. She wondered, could this be the ruins from the original story? Across the continent, there were several ancient ruins believed to date back before the royal era, all sealed by ancient magic. The magic at the entrances unleashed ancient monsters upon detecting intruders, and no one had been able to break the seals since the Great Royal War began. It had become a hot topic across the continent about who would be able to break the ancient magic. Among the ruins, the western ruins were the largest, and they were opened by the emperor in the later part of the original story. To demonstrate his power and magical army, but even he couldn't break the seal. As the magic circle released monsters upon intruders, they attacked commoners. The task of eliminating the monsters and breaking the circle was given to the Black Dragon Knights, which led to Ethan volunteering for the mission, only to lose his life. However, in the original story, this event occurred after her sister's wedding. Why was he investigating this now? This was an unexpected turn of events for her. This wasn't part of the original timeline. Could this be a problem? At that moment, he turned back and saw her staring at the open letter. He asked why she was staring at it for so long, and then he thought, what would a mere knight know about this? Suddenly, he asked if she liked visiting ancient ruins in the West. She was startled and apologized for staring too long. It was just that this was the first time she had seen something that seemed like a knight's mission. He stepped closer, touched her chin, and lifted it so that her eyes met his, saying he thought that having her nearby would make everything more fun. He wanted to see how things would unfold next. But his face was getting dangerously close to hers. They stared at each other for a long time, making her blush and wonder, why is he getting so close? How many more times will he have to hold my face like this? At that moment, the butler entered, seeing the scene before him, looking confused. He didn't care that someone had just walked in and hoped she didn't mind, but he needed a moment with her. Then he shouted at the butler, "What are you doing? Why didn't you ask for permission before entering?" She was relieved to have been saved from the awkward situation. The butler was like her savior. The butler apologized for the interruption, but needed to deliver a letter from His Majesty, apologizing for entering at such a tense moment. He said, "No, you came at the perfect time." At that moment, she quickly tried to slip away. But he looked directly at her and refused, catching her off guard. As he spoke, he wrapped his arm around her waist, lifting her onto his lap, demanding she stay still and listen. She asked him to let her go, frustrated but powerless because he was her superior. He turned back with a serious look, saying, "This is a direct order from your superior." She gasped in shock. His first command to her was to sit still. She couldn't defy an order and agreed, but thought, why is he doing this to me? Did this happen in the original story? The butler asked, "My lord, I need to discuss an important matter. Could you dismiss her for a moment?" He replied, "I'm afraid I can't do that." This left the butler puzzled, unsure of how to handle the situation, as never before had a superior knight shown such interest and trust in someone like this. He responded, "I prefer it this way. I can't focus without her nearby." The butler insisted it was a letter from His Majesty, something important that required attention. He said, "She wouldn't understand our conversation anyway, so feel free to speak." Now wasn't the time to be picky. Whatever the Grand Duke's intentions were, he would act as requested. At that moment, she thought, this will help build his trust in me. I'll be safe here until Ethan returns. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, saying, in her eyes, there was no one else here but the Grand Duke. She would play her part perfectly. Right, Raphael? My Grand Duke? This took Raphael Ludovica by surprise, his face showing a hint of worry. She just needed to wait until Ethan returned safely,